Peace and blessings is real. First and foremost, want to take this time and give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh through his only begotten son, Yahushua, for allowing his word to come out. And I hope you sincere brothers and sisters is edified by this word. And the name of the lesson is called Christ, who we know as Yahushua, invited us all to his banquet, and we made excuses not to come. That's cold-blooded, man. Again, the name of the lesson is called Christ invited us all to his banquet, and we made excuses not to come. Now, if you pause for a minute and you just think about the name of that title, and you think of the thought process and the attitude and the spiritual approach to Yahushua inviting us to his banquet, and we had a nerve to make excuses not to come. You know, that is the utmost spiritual disrespect that someone could demonstrate. Okay. What we're going to deal with tonight in this word is the parable, okay, of the banquet, which is symbolic to the banquet of Yahushua, man. We're going to come to you in Luke chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. And we're going to close this thing out, man. In Luke 14, verse 15, it says, "And when one of them sat at the meat with him, heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of Yahweh." Okay, keep that in mind. Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of Yahweh. Verse 16. Then said he unto him, A certain man made a great supper and bade many. Okay? A certain man made a great supper and bade many. In other words, he notified and he proclaimed many pertaining to this great supper. And in verse 17, it said, And sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. Okay, so those that were invited, okay, the message was sent for them to all come now, okay, to this supper. Verse 18, and they all with one consent began to make excuses. Okay. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee have me excused. Verse 19, and another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee have me excused. Verse 20, and another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. Verse 21, so the servant came and showed his Lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor, and the maimed, and the halt, and the blind. Okay. Verse 22, and the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. Verse 23, and the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. And in verse 24, for I say unto you, that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. You see that? So what you have right there is Yahushua symbolically. Okay, this is dealing with Yahushua. All right. He invited us all to his banquet. and we made excuses not to come, man. All right? And just think about that. When you go back to verse 16, it told you a certain man made a great supper. Okay? That is symbolic to Yahushua making a great supper, a great spiritual supper by way of the gospel, and bade many. He notified and proclaimed to many. And what did he do? He sent a servant at supper time to say to them that were invited, okay? Come, for all things are now ready. You see that? So Yahushua got it all laid out for us, man. The gospel, man. The food, the gospel is the food. Verse 18, what it says, and they all with one consent began to make excuses. So everybody that was invited, that was expected to come, all on one accord made excuses. You had one person say he bought a piece of ground and he must go see it, and he needed to be excused for that. Now, this is somebody that's, okay, turning down an opportunity to break bread with Yahushua to go check on a piece of ground that he bought. Then another bought 5 yoke of oxen and wanted to be excused for that. And then another got married and used that as a reason to not come. And what ended up happening, okay, the servant came back and showed his Lord these things. And the master of the house, he was angry. He said to the servant, go out quickly into the streets and the lanes of the city and bring in the poor, bring in the maimed, bring in the halt, and bring in the blind. Guess why? Because they wasn't going to make no excuses. This is people that could benefit from this banquet. These are people that have faith. These are people that's hungry for the gospel of Yahushua. You see? So they came in, and the servant said in verse 22, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. So after the poor came in, after the maimed came in, after the halt came in, and after the blind came in, off the streets, in the lanes of the city, it was still yet a whole lot of room. There was plenty of seats still available for people to come on in. You see? And what ended up happening, man, verse 23, and the Lord said unto the servant, go out into the highways and hedges. So now, never mind the streets and the lanes of the city. Go out into the highway and hedges and compel them in, entreat them, persuade them, and urge them, okay, to come in, that my house may be filled, okay, that my house be able to reach the level of capacity, man, okay. And in verse 24, what it said, for I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden, which were invited, shall taste of my supper, okay. And these were the men that on one consent that made excuses, okay, to not come to the banquet, all right? So because of that, guess what? They're not going to be able to get a plate at the dinner, at the banquet, okay? They're not going to be able to benefit off the food of the gospel of Yahushua. You see? Because they were acting as non-believers, man. You see? What's the name of the lesson, man? Christ invited us all to his banquet, and we made excuses not to come, man. Okay? Yahushua was offering us the banquet of the gospel of the good news, man, as a meal for us to spiritually nourish ourselves, man. And we actually turned it down by way of making excuses, man. You see, that's why Yahushua spoke about, man, you got to put all that behind to follow him, you see. So if you were willing to get married and handle your marriage affairs versus getting with Yahushua, following Yahushua, you wasn't made for him, you see.